Okay, welcome to Grown Up Storytime.
Yay!
Take one.
Woo!
I'm Emily.
I'm Blair.
I'm Bree.
We produce Grown Up Storytime. If you have been to Rudyard's and been to Grown Up Storytime for Rudyard's, you have likely seen one or all of us introducing the show, which is what we would normally be doing tonight on the third Tuesday of the month. But for obvious reasons, we're not allowed to do that. So we're going to do this instead.
Yeah. We're really excited. We're excited to bring Grown Up Storytime back.
Yeah.
In whatever form it may take.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We've been talking a lot with each other over the past few days. We were attempting to do a live version, which didn't end up working out, unfortunately, because of various issues. But I also would just like to shout out Bree. If I wasn't, I was already so glad that she was on the team, but I feel like Bree really kicked it out of the park trying to put that live event together, and it didn't work out through no fault of her own, but I'm really glad that Bree is here with us.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be a part of the team too. It's been a couple of months now, and it's been a weird couple of months, especially the last half, but I'm just super thrilled to help make this happen because I've been going to Grown Up Storytime for years and I love it and it means a whole lot to me, and I hope that everybody is enjoying it tonight too. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we're all hanging out in the chat right now, probably making comments about us talking at this time.
Yeah, like, where's the stories?
Right? We are all harassing ourselves in the future right now.
Yeah. Okay, so we should say that instead of doing a live event, we're doing a watch party instead. So if you are watching this, if you tuned in at 8, you can chat with us. We'll be in the chat. Other people, maybe the readers and the writers might be there. So you can, even though it's technically live, we are experiencing it together.
That being said, though, just make sure you're observing the same sort of audience norms that you would normally observe, at least in your commentary and any sort of things. Like, we're all watching this together.
But also, you're actually allowed to compliment the story while it's happening, which typically you can't do. So take advantage of this opportunity.
You can't use your real words. You can only use your ha-has and ohs.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now you can type it out.
Or my favorite is when just one person barks out a laugh and it's otherwise silent. Those are good. Those are good.
Yeah.
That's me sometimes.
So feel free to keep doing that.
So what do we normally do at the top of the show? What's the stuff that we normally run through, you guys? How much of it still applies?
Well, Emily, we got to talk about food.
Yeah. We always say that if you're sitting in maybe some of the front row seating, to make sure they can see your number, because if they can't see your number, you're not going to get your food, and then your tots are going to get cold on the back counter. So instead of that,
make sure that your Uber Eats guy has the passcode to your apartment complex. Make sure that you tip them in the app, contactless. You want to make sure that they don't have to touch anything while they're trying to find you.
Yeah, new kind of number situation.
That's some Storytime appropriate content. Okay, we also always talk about workshops coming up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, right now that's on hold. But in terms of in-person, especially the readers workshop, that's really only a workshop that works if we can actually be at Rudyard's, so you can practice being a reader where you're going to read. So we do have the writing workshop, though, in Instagram story form. If you go to our Instagram, Grown Up Storytime Houston, it is
just Grown Up Storytime.
Whoops, my bad. I'm sorry. I've got our email real well in my brain, though, because that's where you're going to send your stories if you have any that you're working on. grownupstorytimehouston@gmail.com. We will give you feedback. I mean, I know I have time. to give all the feedback. But you can check out our tips and tricks on our Instagram. It's one of our highlights is got all of them in there. So workshops.
I don't know what else we would talk. Oh, we would remind people to be quiet during the stories too, but
to only like go to the bathroom in between stories.
Yeah.
To like creep by people as like carefully as they can in the crowd.
Not applicable tonight. Yeah.
Go
not
pee.
applicable tonight.
Do whatever. Text your friends.
There are some perks to this.
Yeah. Okay. Any other announcements we have to make before the show? Yes.
I do. So I have been so lucky to work with Houston Shift Meal. Either I am receiving meals or I'm helping deliver meals. So if you are somebody who's currently in the hospitality industry and you're struggling, please don't spend your money on food. Houston Shift Meal has partnered with so many restaurants, which also puts the restaurants in work. And if you go to their Facebook, Houston Shift Meal events, they have like multiple events every day where you can go and pick up a free meal. If you are not in the hospitality industry, but you're like, man, that sounds cool, I want to support them, they are taking donations on their website, houstonshiftmeal.com. Everything helps because for $250, they can get a restaurant to make 50 to 75 meals. So any like little amounts, it all starts adding up and it's great. So Houston Shift Meal, woo!
We'll put that link somewhere, like maybe in the event or
in the description
chat or And also we set up a Venmo account for our performers tonight too. It's GUST Houston is the handle. So we still pay all of our writers and all of our readers like usual. So it's really important to continue supporting the arts. I know that so many industries are hurting and going to have trouble bouncing back, and I can't help but think that the arts is going to be one of the ones that struggles the most, just because it's so audience centered and really requires you to like be around people. So any support is appreciated. We'll put that in the link or in the description also. And that money will just go to artists too.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Tell you what the stories are and then get started.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we've got 4 stories tonight. It's a little shorter than usual, but these are stories that we had originally chosen for our March show. We're putting them up now in April. Please keep sending us stories. We'll be doing this until they make us stop. So keep sending stories into grownupstorytimehouston@gmail.com. Tonight, these are your 4 stories. First up, Pushy, written by Clare Miklaunus and read by Amy Grisbee. Next is Old Yellow and the Invisible Accent, written by Vince Blasco and read by Gabriel Regojo. Up next is A Good Death, written by Johanna Hume and read by Cristina Brown. And last, we've got What Does Your Heart Tell You, written by John Wayne Comunale and read by Andrew Love. I think these are all hits, you guys.
Let's see them.
So enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Amy Grisbee, and I'll be reading Pushy by Clare Miklaunus. Names have been changed to protect the people who may find this story upsetting and sue me because they are likely still very wealthy. During the ages of 7 to 8 years old, I had a friend named Natasha. She was a very beautiful girl, stunning in fact. You could certainly gather she was going to mature into an absolutely gorgeous woman. She had long, thick, and healthy brunette hair, porcelain skin, and the most beautiful green almond eyes. Her lashes were long and eyebrows strong and arcing. I could continue addressing every portion of her person, though that would likely make for an entire story in itself. Natasha was almost a year older than me, yet it would have made little difference if we had been the identical age. She was a very bright child, much brighter than myself, and she knew that. She was extremely well educated and attended a private school which I had never even heard of. While I struggled through division, Natasha breezily memorized her table of powers and cubes. Her parents were wealthy divorcees and lived a few miles apart, yet close enough so that the commute of joint custody was not an issue. They shared an exactly equal amount of custody, and there was routine, order, and consistency in their separate lives. I had spent sleepovers with each of her parents' houses, and it seemed as though it was a fairy tale to my young peasant mind. Both parents' houses were beautiful, clean, and safe places. Upon spending time in her bedroom in each parent's home, her mother asked me if I had noticed anything about her bedrooms. At the time, I was seated on her floor in Natasha's bedroom at her mother's house, playing with a multitude of toys all at once, and I racked my brain attempting to recall anything unusual and couldn't. Once I had given up, her mother offered the answer. Natasha's bedrooms are identical in each house. Every possession of Natasha's was duplicated in each home, right down to her bed frame and throw pillows. I presume that this was done so as to make Natasha feel equally loved and cared for in each of the houses. Every item was portable and had a small brand on it to signify which location it belonged in. Natasha had become skilled in forgery as she attempted to con her parents by altering the brands and smuggling the paraphernalia across the parental borders. On many occasions, she had been stopped and fined by a parent. If there was a regulation that either parent enforced, her most important goal immediately became in breaking it. Her father owned a crossbow system in the home gym room, and Natasha was instructed never to set foot inside that room without her father's presence. As you can imagine, many of our playdates involved loitering, trespassing, and potentially killing ourselves by treating the weighted pulley system like a play structure. Oh, I thought she was amazing. You may be wondering how in the world such a little punk brat like myself managed an amazing, esteemed friendship with Natasha. The answer is ballet. We met in the small ballet school in my hometown and spent many evenings together while both of our mothers attended adult dance classes. We would play in the dressing rooms together, which was such a thrill for me, seeing as most of my evenings I spent there alone. My favorite pastime being fishing forgotten point shoes out of the lost and found and wearing them like clown shoes while attempting tricks I'd seen only the advanced levels practicing. Natasha's mother was a well-trained ballerina, while my mother was a modern dancer of mediocre ability. Natasha and I also attended the same level of ballet classes. We had been recently preparing for a big recital performance for many weeks, and the day of the show had finally arrived. Backstage, excitement and nerves intermingled. Students busily bustled around preparing and forming small groups to wait until their class number was called to the wings of the stage. My class had been stationed along one wall in the hall leading to the studio stage. Our teacher came by to check on us and gave us our 5-minute call. We stood against the wall like soldiers preparing for battle. Natasha turned and addressed our class. "Good luck, everyone," she whispered loudly. The rest of us responded shakily and gave a wish of good luck, an anxious pat on the back, or a slight nod of the head. Then she turned to me. "Good luck, especially to you," she whispered. "Oh, thank you, you too," I replied excitedly. "No," she laughed. "You're supposed to ask me why," she corrected me. "Oh, okay then, why?" I was a bit confused. Natasha, the girl I was completely enamored with, leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "'Cause you're gonna need it." "Oh," I paused. "Okay, but why do I really need it?" I asked, still baffled by this exchange. "Because," she sighed and rolled her eyes at my obvious mental delay. She looked at me directly with a mixed expression of pity and concern. Because you can't dance." Without a second of hesitation, I took her by her shoulders and shoved her firmly. She stumbled backwards, tripping over lumps of discarded warm-ups and bags, and landed with a thud in the middle of the hall. The entire class gasped as our teacher rounded the corner to find our gorgeous valedictorian lying in the middle of the floor, sobbing. There was nothing for me to hide. Everyone had clearly witnessed my assault on her. The jury was unanimous. And the show went on. I danced with a rage and determination that I had never felt before. I danced only for my right to dance. After the show, the judges voted in my favor, to the utter shock and dismay of Natasha, her parents, myself. One of the older girls had witnessed our exchange and known that something Natasha had said to me must have injured me badly. Later, Natasha admitted to the insult she had shot me. After further counsel and discussion by the judges, I was released on dance probation and thereby began my career as a little pusher. Thank you.
Old Yellow and the Invisible Accent. I speak with the invisible American accent, albeit with a lisp. It's the accent you hear everywhere but can't place. It's the accent that national news anchors and TV personalities use. In other words, it is a plain, boring, unaccented Midwestern American English. They say that the greatest single influence on a person's accent is not their parents' manner of speaking, but that of their friends when they are children. Yet somehow I managed to buck that statistic. When my friends growing up spoke with either a strong Texas nasal drawl or occasionally a clipped Spanish accent, I managed to keep the boring, some might say correct, grammar my parents taught me. As Midwestern educators raising a child in the South, and particularly as Mexican-American Midwestern educators who had worked hard to speak both unaccented Mexico City Spanish and unaccented Midwestern English, they were wary of their son picking up what they considered to be the less desirable, irregular East Texanisms. As such, they tried to teach me both languages in their most universal form. And so I was taught from an early age that ain't a word, and y'all was unacceptable. You should be pronounced like the letter, and ya was also unacceptable. In fact, growing up, it was often noted, sometimes well-intentioned, and sometimes not, how white I sounded. I give my parents all the credit for trying their best, but I can't help wondering what it would have been like to not have sounded quite so formal as a child. I guess all people can give is what they have to give. Now, between the ages of 2 and 4, I went to the Hynds Day nursery for daycare. The head instructor there for the 4-year-olds was a wonderful woman from New Iberia, Louisiana named Miss Gale, who spoke using the rich tapestry of regional colloquialisms and irregular forms you might expect. However, when I came home saying y'all, my parents rather heavy-handedly reminded me that the correct form of y'all was just you, just like the letter in the alphabet, which, by the way, I had just learned. Now, armed with this information, I went back to the daycare the next day, and as soon as Miss Gale used the forbidden word, I pounced. "No!" I loudly declared to her in the class. I then proceeded to inform her and everyone else that y'all was incorrect, and that the correct word was you, like the letter. And I flourished with my hand in a wide sweeping U shape to emphasize the point. She smiled kindly and asked me to sit down. I don't really remember what happened at the nursery the rest of the day, though I suspect it was the usual routine of playing in the giant playground, nap time, and lunch in the little cafeteria that so distinctly and perpetually smelled like cooked or microwaved ketchup that to this day I am immediately transported back there as soon as I smell it. In any case, that evening over dinner, I proudly told my parents about how I had corrected the Miss Gale when she used the offending y'all. After a brief pause, my Mortified parents then proceeded to try to explain to their 4-year-old in the most simplified yet nuanced way that Miss Gale was from Louisiana, where they spoke with a different dialect, and that one shouldn't try to tell other people how to speak. Now, I, of course, made the obvious protest that my parents told me how to speak all the time, upon which I was reminded that that was different. Now, dropping me off the next day at the nursery, my father sheepishly apologized to Miss Gale for my correcting her, and they both had a good laugh about it. About a month later, I stayed up with my father to watch the ABC 13 Friday night movie at 10 o'clock. It was a classic, Old Yeller. Soon after the titular Yeller dog was introduced, I noted to my parents that they were pronouncing it wrong, and that it should be Old Yellow. Now, my father again gave an as simplified and nuanced explanation as he could to a 4-year-old regarding the differences in pronunciation in different parts of the country, and that particularly in the case of artistic and literary situations, the irregularity was acceptable, but that yes, technically I was correct and that it should be pronounced Old Yellow. And like a good father, proceeded to give me the appropriate praise and recognition for recognizing as such. Now, he also comforted me at the end of the movie when I bawled my eyes out. If you haven't seen this movie, I hope that someone is there for you to do the same when you do. And this was the ebb and flow of me doing my best to navigate the American received pronunciation and keep my English as unaccented and unremarkable as my nasal, lispy speech would allow. Now, fast forward to about 25 years, and find me in the kitchen with my father while I rummaged through the kitchen looking for something to snack on. I opened the refrigerator and looked to see what I could find. My father told me that if I wanted, there was a Pyrex container in the back with some old Jell-O. I stopped, steeled myself for the kill, turned to him with a wry grin, and reminded them, in these parts, we call it Old Yeller.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cristina Brown, and I will be reading a story for you called A Good Death by Lindy Parslow. My mother was a vivacious, over-the-top, suck the air out of the room diva, anti-Mame type character who loved me and my sister with a fierceness that left us reeling at times. So, watching her deteriorate for a decade with arthritis, diabetes, and congestive heart failure was soul-crushing, enraging, and depressing. But thanks to God, or the goddess, or the universe, or Kali, or some force of nature, that decline is not this story. No, this is how my mother died a good death. One that was dramatic enough to suit her purpose and hilarious enough for me to write about because, thanks to Mom, I don't personally do drama. Mom died of a butterfly glioblastoma. Now, you're thinking, gal, that's not so funny. But it was, because it was my mom, and she was fucking hilarious. And brain tumors are often tragic because of the treatment, not the disease. And she refused treatment. Here I'm going to use the following phrase as it should be used in a genuine sense. Bless her heart. She knew what she was doing. The neurosurgeon who diagnosed her came to the hospital room to talk with my mom, my sister, and me super late one night. He had clearly been in surgery for ages and had blood all over his scrubs, which I filed as odd and surreal later. He sat down on the bed and chatted with us for an hour. What a marvelous man. He started to give us options. I asked, will surgery or chemo or radiation get my mom's short-term memory back? By then, she had lost a shit ton of it. And he said, oh, no, not at all. So there was that. She would, from then on, almost always be living simultaneously in the far past and immediate present, with only a few moments of startling clarity in between. And I asked how long she would have with treatment and without, and the answer was 4 months without treatment and a year with. My mom gave us one of those moments of startling clarity and said, "Don't be ridiculous," and she laughed like she was a young woman. She looked as beautiful as I imagined she had when she was 30, and began to flirt outrageously with the surgeon, who was her age. They talked of old times and her years of being in the Women's Army Corps, his years in the Army. It was an amazing thing to watch, the two of them for the next half hour or so. He, his exhaustion seemingly totally lifted. Her, the brain tumor suspended in time, totally articulate. Those were the last fully functioning 30 minutes she had. And they were the exact 30 minutes I would have chosen for her, with a brilliant, fascinating 70-year-old man who was completely immersed in her storytelling. Then he took his leave, and my descent into comedy horror began. The next night, my mother relentlessly tried to pick me up. And I don't mean like when I was a baby. Yeah. She thought I was some chick she was in love with in the Army. And there's nothing quite like being chased around a hospital room, being hit on by your mom. What's your response? Do you call her mom? Do you play along but say you're tired and have a headache? I have an adult son, and the only thing running through my head in the wee hours of that night were, "Oh, holy shit, dear God," and I'm not the praying type, but I was that night, "Please, oh please God, do not let me get a brain tumor and make a pass at my son." Or, worse yet, as the days and nights rolled on, "Please save me from dementia, brain tumor days, because I do not want to reveal all of my deep, dark secrets to my son." Let this sink into all the parents out there. Yes, take a moment and roll through all the big secrets. And now, the little ones, like my mom did to me. You know, I don't mind being the bearer of my mom's secrets. I am, in fact, the proud repository of her scandals, the shockers, the deep well of stories not fit for print. The little embarrassments, too. Some I won't tell to another soul, maybe. But I am scared shitless that my son will be the bearer of mine. Ironic. My mom's secrets made her more human to me, made me realize why she raised me and my sister the way she did. I became more forgiving, gave her more leeway, loved her more. It was a weight that came off of me. Oh, I see. Oh, of course. I hold these secrets like little baby kittens, or maybe baby mice. But my secrets and my son? But no. Let's see. Some other comedic moments. Oh, we quickly had to put Mom into a nursing facility since she was turning on all the stove burners and unlocking the front door. That's not the funny part. No need to nervously laugh at that. The facility was less than 15 minutes from my house. Given my flexible schedule and tons of sick leave, which I look back on with immense gratitude, I could have breakfast with her, do my work, then be with her all afternoon and evening. So I walked in one afternoon and my mom had on pants I had never seen. "Hey, Mom, awesome purple pants. Aren't they beautiful?" She was always so enthusiastic and talked to me as if I had just been there 2 minutes before. "Where'd you get them, Mom?" She refused to answer and just shrugged mysteriously. Of course, she had stolen them from some other resident. I learned that happens a lot with dementia patients. They like to go hunting and rummaging in other rooms, and brain tumors mimic dementia symptoms. So Mom wound up with a lot of shit that wasn't hers. Hey, if you can't bother to put your name on your stuff with Sharpie like they told you to, you're lost. Mom is going to take possession and wear it proudly. Then there was the day she was wearing plastic bags. Again, crazy enthusiasm. Look, aren't these gorgeous? Wow, Mom, that's amazing. She had tied plastic bags on her feet like bows. Not kidding. And at that point, a minister came by to pray with her. Now, my mom, not a religious person pre-brain tumor, but post-brain tumor, she loved the religious people. Prayed like she was dying. Which she did not know, I promise. I wonder about all those volunteers, if they really understand that it's the illness talking. I have a stepson who has a traumatic brain injury caused by a drug overdose. Yes, this family is a barrel of laughs. He too loves the prayer people. He too is in a nursing home part-time. He gleefully shows me their cards when I come by. Look who came to visit. Yep, I see. Where were they, I wonder, when you were on drugs? Perhaps this story isn't as full of hilarity as I thought. There are dozens of other stories from those last 2 months, but I'll leave you with the hardworking nurses and aides. They loved my mom, and they would always say what a joy she was. And then, invariably, they would ask the same question. Was your mom always this sweet? I didn't have the heart to tell most of them. Oh, fuck no, she was hell on wheels. Cheers, Mom. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Love, and today I'm going to be reading What Does Your Heart Tell You by John Wayne Comunale. So, Nick P. and I were smoking a bowl in the bathroom of our hotel room in Atlanta on 3 hits of acid each, discussing whether or not we should take a 4th before going back out for the night. What does your heart tell you? Nick asked, passing the pipe to me from where he sat perched on the edge of the bathtub. I was sitting on the toilet, although it wasn't as comfortable as you might think with the seat down. I guess they didn't take that particular comfort feature into consideration when toilet seats were first invented. Maybe that was why my grandmother kept fluffy crocheted covers on all of hers. Anyway, while Nick dispenses this particular nugget of advice quite often, I felt it especially pertained to our current discussion. Nick has also most recently taken to using the phrase, "I reckon," in response to just about any question. I set the pipe on the sink and tapped out 2 small squares of paper into my palm from an appropriately sized blue envelope covered in white stars. I popped one of the squares into my mouth and gave Nick the other, to which he did the same. "I reckon," was all he said after taking a deep pull from the can of beer he was holding. I hit the pipe, passed it back to Nick, and checked the time. "We should probably start making our way down there," I said, attempting to look in the mirror through the hovering cloud of reefer smoke. I should explain that Nick and I were at a horror convention at this time where I just spent the majority of the day selling books while he spent the majority of the day sleeping. But now here we were together in the bathroom on mostly even ground as far as self-medicating was concerned. For me, from behind me, I could hear Nick going on about Bruce Dern and some movie he was in, and for the most part, I wasn't paying attention. There was an after party going on downstairs, where I was scheduled to play some songs, and my focus was on getting the 2 of us moving and out the door. I kicked Nick out and told him to get dressed while I took a piss so we could leave. Splashed some water on my face, gave myself a Boogie Nights-esque pep talk, and I was ready to go. When I stepped out of the bathroom, I found Nick was decidedly not ready. Instead, he was standing between the two beds, holding a belt in one hand and the remote control in the other. I looked at the television and saw the acid-drenched face of Bruce Dern looking back. "Hey, Nick," I said gently as if talking to a child. "I thought you were getting ready to leave. You can watch Bruce Dern movies when we get back." "I gotta find my belt first," he replied without looking at me. "It's in your hand, dude." Nick looked down at the remote control he was holding with a confused look on his face. A few seconds later, he looked over at his other hand and smiled. "Oh yeah, I found it." Nick held the belt up proudly like it was a salmon he'd just snatched from the water with his bare hand. I stood by the door with my guitar case, waiting with a beer in hand. I'd also thought ahead and stuffed a beer into each pocket of my jacket, because you can never be too prepared, especially when you're on the road. I advised Nick to fill his pants with beer as well, and we finally walked out the door. "Oh shit, wait, I forgot something." Nick stopped the door before it slammed shut, pushed it back open, and quickly disappeared inside. I announced my disgust through a loud and long sigh, to which Nick yelled something in reply, but I couldn't understand him through the door. Also, I didn't care. When he emerged a minute later, we started down the hall, but after only a few steps, Nick stopped. "Hey man," he said when he turned around, Is that acid kicking in for you yet?" I paused before answering to reflect. When I noticed the pattern on the carpet rolling around and saw that the walls were breathing, I realized it had, and relayed that information to Nick. I also told him we still really needed to get going, and that he could watch the walls breathe once we were at the party. We started to walk again, but it didn't take long for Nick to fall behind. I turned around to find him slowly meandering along while staring up at a ceiling, smiling like he'd just popped his first boner. "God damn it, Nick!" I called, trying not to be loud. "Hurry the hell up!" I whirled back around and power walked to the end of the hall, looking straight ahead the whole time, which was mostly because I didn't want to get caught up in whatever Nick was seeing in the ceiling. I turned around, fully expecting for Nick to still be at least 50 feet behind, but I was not expecting him to be gone completely, which was the case. I admit, this was really good acid, but it wasn't good enough to make a person disappear. However, this did indeed appear to be what the case was in this instance. I blinked furiously just to make sure my eyes were clear, but I realized Nick's too big a guy to hide behind a smudge on my cornea. I contemplated the possibility he'd turned around and gone back to the room, but to go the other way down the hall quickly enough for me not to have noticed would have required a great amount of speed. Again, Nick is a big guy who does not possess such athletic prowess, and like I said before, it was really good acid, but not imbue you with super speed good. I was more curious than upset at this point, but I was also late. I put Nick in the hands of the universe and soldiered on to the party. There was nothing I could do to help the poor bastard now anyway. Meanwhile, I managed to tame the acid back long enough to play my songs without being swallowed by the carpet or sucked into the ceiling. I mingled afterwards and drank all my pocket beers before retrieving my case from behind the stage and slipping off into the darkness, back to the room. When I opened the door, Nick was sitting on the edge of his bed, holding the remote control and giggling. "Oh, good. I'm glad you're here," he said. "I gotta show you this." "You're glad I'm here?" I said, dropping my case and looking for a beer amongst the empties on the table. "What the hell happened to you anyway?" Nick looked up and squinted in my direction. "When?" I took a brief moment to collect myself and find a full beer before I proceeded to remind Nick of how he disappeared in the hallway over an hour ago and never made it to the party. He looked up at the ceiling while silently mouthing the word party, like he was struggling to grasp the concept. Then he really started to giggle as he told me how he'd disappeared. Apparently, The ice and vending machines are located in a room in every hallway, which isn't out of the ordinary, but for some reason, this room had a door on it. The door looked exactly like all the other doors lining both sides of the wall, except it was missing a handle. To gain access to this room, all one had to do was push, which was what Nick accidentally did when he leaned against it so he could adjust his shoe because he thought it might be talking to him. He said he stumbled into the room, and when the door swung shut behind him, he just forgot where he was. He said he got distracted looking at the vending machine. I was confused, Nick told me. I thought I was on break or some shit. On break from what? Exactly, he said seriously. When I realized that I came back to the room, now check this shit out. And check that shit out I did. We sat up all night watching Bruce Dern movies with a good portion spent watching one scene in particular on loop where a falcon flies out of nowhere and lands on his wrist. It was badass. There really is no profound or insightful end to this story. Sometimes you just have to do what your heart tells you and take a break. I reckon. The end.
That was it.
That
That was story time.
That was it. We did it.
I loved it. Loved every second of it.
I loved it too. It really made me feel like I was there at story time in the dark.
You know, it just really took me back.
In the back of the room, sitting at
That dark, shadowy upstairs Redyards, you guys.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean, yeah.
Any comments about stories that we need to make before we close the night out?
I think we just want more stories, right?
Yeah.
So
Send them to us. We love
Yeah.
reading them. We have so little else to do.
or I would much rather be reading your stories. Let's just put it that way. I would like to prioritize reading.
Yeah,
stories.
it's not work. It's not tedious. We like doing it. I think sometimes people don't want to send us stories because they're like, oh, I don't want to like bother them if it's not done, I mean.
Yeah.
You know, like, but if it's not done, you should send it to us anyways and we can help you, and we actually like doing that. So it's grownupstorytimehouston@gmail.com.
And our Venmo.
Our Venmo for the performers tonight is GUST Houston is the handle. And our Instagram is just Grown Up Storytime. If you just want to visit that, like it, support it. It's kind of new, so we need to build up the followers on that for sure. What else?
I think that's the things.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen next month. We have no idea. We are just as much in the dark and light as you, but at some point we will all be together again.
But totally subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
Just like in case we're here again in May, but even if we're not, we have literally hundreds of Grown Up Storytime stories on this channel that you can go back and watch, and it'll, remember good times. If you're new to Grown Up Storytime, it's a great way to just check out more of what it's about. Emily is putting together some really excellent playlists. What's the one that's up right now? It's group activities.
Yeah, group activities. They're like quarantine themed playlists. So the one that's already up now is group activities. I have a self-care one I'm working on.
Ooh,
and also
you don't want to miss
travel. That. So those will be coming soon.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in and watching with us and chatting with us. We miss you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye. See you next month.